1951, deep in the Malayan jungle, a 12-man SAS patrol moves single file through vegetation so dense that the man in front disappears at arm's length. The point man carries something that looks wrong, not a rifle, not a submachine gun, a shotgun, a weapon that military doctrine dismissed as primitive, obsolete, unfit for modern warfare. He has 4 rounds in the tube and 1 in the chamber. In the next 3 seconds, he will need every single one. The ambush explodes at 20 feet. Muzzle flashes through the green. The point man fires 5 times in under 3 seconds. 5 rounds of 9-pellet SG buckshot. 45 pellets fill the kill zone before the communist terrorists can work the bolts on their Japanese rifles. 2 enemy dead. The rest scatter into the jungle. The patrol suffers no casualties. This was not an anomaly. The British Operational Research Section in Singapore studied hundreds of these contacts and reached a conclusion that contradicted everything conventional military thinking believed about aimed fire. The number of semi-automatic shotguns carried on a patrol was directly proportional to the number of kills achieved. Not rifles, not submachine guns, shotguns. The primitive weapon was the deadliest thing in the jungle. The shotgun in question was the Browning Auto 5, designated L-32A1 in British service, a weapon designed in 1898 for hunting ducks, a weapon that would shape SAS doctrine for the next 70 years. This is the story of how British tactical adaptation turned a sporting gun into the most feared weapon in the Malayan Emergency. The Browning Auto 5 began with a patent dispute that changed firearms history. John Moses Browning completed his prototype for the world's first successful semi-automatic shotgun in 1898. He filed US patent number 659507 on February 8, 1900, describing what he called a recoil-operated firearm. Browning had sold 44 previous patents to Winchester for lump sum payments. For this design, he demanded royalties. Winchester refused. In January 1902, Browning walked away from a 19-year partnership. He scheduled a meeting with Remington's president, who died of a heart attack that same afternoon. Browning then sailed to Europe for the first time in his life. On March 24, 1902, he signed a contract with Fabrique Nationale in Herstal, Belgium. FN began production immediately. The first Auto 5 shipped to Browning on September 17, 1903. According to company records, Browning called it his best achievement. The mechanism that made the Auto 5 distinctive created its famous silhouette. The long recoil system requires the bolt to travel rearward a distance greater than the length of an entire shotgun shell. This demands a taller, longer receiver, producing the squared-off hump at the rear that earned the weapon its nickname, the humpback. When fired, the barrel and bolt recoil together as a locked unit, compressing springs in both the forearm and buttstock. At maximum travel, the bolt locks back. The barrel spring pushes the barrel forward, extracting and ejecting the spent shell. The bolt then releases, strips a fresh round from the magazine, and chambers it. The entire cycle happens automatically between trigger pulls. This gave the Auto 5 critical advantages for jungle warfare. Unlike gas-operated shotguns that came later, the long recoil system has no gas ports to clog with mud, water, or debris. The tropical conditions of Malaya, with humidity reaching 100%, destroyed weapons with exposed gas systems. The Auto 5 kept functioning. The mechanism also spread recoil over a longer impulse, reducing felt kick and enabling faster follow-up shots. In 12-gauge configuration, the weapon held 4 rounds in the tubular magazine plus 1 in the chamber, delivering 5 shots as fast as the shooter could pull the trigger. Production numbers reflect the design's success. FN manufactured the Auto 5 until 1975, then licensed production to Japan's Moroku Corporation until 1998. Remington produced over 850,000 copies as the Model 11 between 1905 and 1947. Savage built the Model 720. Total production across all variants exceeded 2.7 million Browning-branded guns alone, with millions more in licensed copies. The Malayan Emergency began on June 16, 1948, when communist insurgents murdered 3 European plantation managers in Perak. The Malayan Races Liberation Army, the military wing of the Malayan Communist Party under Chin Peng, numbered between 5,000 and 10,000 fighters at peak strength. Their tactics evolved from large-scale attacks, which British firepower crushed quickly, to small raiding parties of fewer than a dozen men. They specialised in trail ambushes, hit-and-run attacks on rubber plantations and tin mines, and assassination of European managers and cooperative village leaders. The British arrived equipped for European warfare. The Lee-Enfield No. 4, Mark I, was a superb bolt-action rifle, accurate beyond 500 yards with a 10-round magazine. A trained soldier could fire 15 aimed rounds per minute. The weapon was also 44 inches long, snagged constantly on vegetation, and was designed for engagement distances 10 to 20 times greater than what the jungle permitted. The shortened No. 5 Mark I, called the Jungle Carbine, improved handling but suffered from a wandering zero that destroyed accuracy after sustained firing. Its brutal recoil from the 18.8-inch barrel made rapid follow-up shots difficult. The Sten submachine gun should have solved the problem. Compact, fully automatic, firing 500 rounds per minute. Instead, it was a reliability disaster. Soldiers called it the plumber's abortion. According to comparative trials, the Sten stopped functioning immediately when exposed to mud, sand, or water. The Australian Owen gun, with its top-mounted gravity-fed magazine, kept firing in identical conditions, but Owen's supply was limited. The Bren light machine gun was reliable, but weighed 22 pounds loaded, exhausting on multi-week jungle patrols. The fundamental problem was doctrinal. British weapons training emphasised aimed fire at identified targets. In the jungle, there were no identified targets. Visibility rarely exceeded 6 to 30 feet through primary jungle canopy. Firefights lasted seconds. A communist terrorist appeared as a fleeting shadow through foliage, fired, and vanished. Engagement distances routinely fell below 20 to 30 yards. At these ranges, a bolt-action rifle's precision was wasted and its slow cycling was a death sentence. The Browning Auto 5 entered British service through an urgent cash buy from FN in Belgium, purchased off the shelf rather than through normal military procurement. The initial guns were standard 12-gauge sporting models with 28-inch barrels. These were quickly sawn down to 18 inches or shorter to improve handling in dense undergrowth. According to National Army Museum records, later purchases included FN police contract models with 24-inch barrels and extended 8-round magazines. Some weapons were modified in theatre to hold up to 10 rounds. The ammunition required adaptation to the environment. Standard British paper-hulled shot shells swelled grotesquely in tropical humidity. Plastic shells did not exist until 1962. Contemporary reports note experiments with non-paper hulls and specially loaded shells to resist humidity, though archival sourcing on specific manufacturers and case materials remains incomplete. Standard SG loads with 9 buckshot pellets were widely used, and the logic was ruthless. More pellets meant more hits. Even minor wounds in the tropical jungle, far from medical care, had great chances of becoming infected. Now, before we see how this weapon performed in combat, if you're finding this deep dive into British tactical innovation useful, consider subscribing. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps the channel grow. Now, let us get into the proof. The British Operational Research Section conducted formal comparative studies of weapon effectiveness on jungle patrols. According to their findings, the Browning Auto 5 was the most effective weapon on patrols, outperforming the Lee-Enfield No. 5 rifle, the M1 carbine, the Bren light machine gun, and the Sten Mark 5 submachine gun. The Auto 5 reportedly accrued the highest number of kills in sudden encounters of any weapon in the British arsenal. A later Joint Service Combat Shotgun Programme study, incorporating statistics from the subsequent Borneo confrontation, quantified the advantage precisely. Shotgun hit probability against man-sized targets was 45% greater than a submachine gun, firing a 5-round burst and twice as great as an assault rifle. Within 30 yards, the typical jungle engagement distance, the shotgun provided a compelling tactical advantage. The tactical mathematics was straightforward. 5 rounds of 9-pellet SG buckshot put 45 pellets into the engagement zone in under 3 seconds. Each trigger pull delivered a spreading cone of 9 pellets that widened to roughly 10 to 15 inches at 20 yards. This dramatically increased the probability of hitting a target that appeared for mere seconds through dense foliage. The point man did not need to see his target clearly. He needed to react instinctively and put lethal energy into the right area. The Auto 5 found its most enthusiastic users among the unconventional forces that proved decisive in Malaya. Ferret Force, formed in July 1948 by Lieutenant Colonel Walter Walker, pioneered small-unit deep penetration tactics. Composed of 12-man teams with Eben trackers from Sarawak, Ferret Force destroyed at least 12 communist jungle camps in 6 months before being disbanded. Too unconventional for the traditional military establishment, their legacy passed directly to the Malayan Scouts, formed in July 1950 by Major Mad Mike Calvert, a Chindit veteran. Calvert assembled a squadron from volunteers, including former Ferret Force, SOE, and SAS personnel. B Squadron came from 21 SAS reservists. C Squadron comprised Rhodesian volunteers. Redesignated 22 SAS Regiment on December 22, 1951, the unit conducted deep penetration patrols lasting up to 103 days, locating communist camps, guiding airstrikes, and conducting ambushes. A shotgun per patrol became standard SAS practice. The most effective practitioner, according to regimental accounts, was Sergeant Bob Turnbull, a tracker and jungle fighter whose preferred weapon was a 12-gauge shotgun. The SAS developed a signature tactical pattern. The lead scout carried the Auto 5, followed by troops with submachine guns and rifles. Every few hundred yards, the point man rotated and handed the shotgun to his replacement. This ensured the most exposed soldier always had the most devastating close-range weapon. The rotation acknowledged both the shotgun's tactical value and the intense psychological strain of walking point in jungle, where an ambush could erupt at arm's length. The rationale was simple. When a communist ambush exploded at 20 feet, the point man's job was to dump the entire magazine into the kill zone instantly. 5 rounds, 45 buckshot pellets, in under 3 seconds. This either killed the ambushers or created enough suppressive chaos for the rest of the patrol to maneuver. Against insurgents armed with bolt-action, Arisaka rifles, captured Lee-Enfields, and unreliable homemade weapons, the Auto 5's volume of close-range fire created a decisive tactical asymmetry. The communist forces faced an impossible disadvantage. Their weapons were a deteriorating collection designed for a different kind of war. Japanese Arisaka Type 38 rifles in 6.5mm captured Lee-Enfields, German Kar 98K Mausers supplied from Soviet stocks, Thompson submachine guns originally provided by the British for anti-Japanese resistance. All were aimed fire weapons requiring target identification and precision shooting. In jungle contacts measured in seconds, this was catastrophic against shotgun-armed British patrols. The supply situation made it worse. Unlike the Viet Minh or later the Viet Cong, the Malayan communists had no shared land border with a communist state and received minimal external support. After 1950, Chinese aid turned to a trickle of crude, often unserviceable copies of military weapons. Against this arsenal, a well-equipped British patrol with an Auto 5 on point possessed overwhelming close-range firepower superiority. The shotgun was not the only factor in British success. The Iban trackers who could follow trails invisible to European eyes, the intelligence networks built through resettlement programs, the air support and brigade-level reforms all contributed to defeating the insurgency. But in the close-range contacts where most kills occurred, the Auto 5 provided a decisive tactical advantage that operational research repeatedly confirmed. The Malayan experience fundamentally shifted British military thinking about close-quarter weapons. The principle that the best weapon depends entirely on the operating environment, that a precision rifle is not inherently superior to a spread weapon, became embedded in British Special Forces doctrine. The L-32A1 served continuously through the Borneo confrontation from 1963 to 1966, where SAS and infantry patrols used it alongside weapons whose adoption reflected similar thinking about lightweight close-range lethality. British units were among the early foreign customers experimenting with lightweight, small-caliber rifles in Southeast Asia. Colton Armalite had sold AR-15 rifles into the region by 1959, and British special units were testing similar concepts before the rifle saw wide American service. The Auto 5 continued serving in Kenya during the Mau Mau uprising, and in Northern Ireland as a patrol and crowd control weapon. According to Hansard records, MP Jeremy Corbyn asked a parliamentary question about L-32A1 ammunition costs in 1989, evidence the weapon was still being supplied and used decades after Malaya. As late as 2017, the L-32A1 appeared in British Army Tactical Hearing Protection documentation, confirming it remained in inventory. The Jungle Warfare School at Kota Tinggi in Johor, operational from 1948 to 1971, institutionalized these lessons. Commonwealth, Asian, and Allied forces trained in patrol tactics that included the shotgun-armed point man doctrine. The school relocated to Brunei, where the British Army Jungle Warfare Training School continues today. The American experience in Vietnam independently validated the British finding. The United States deployed an estimated 200,000 or more shotguns, primarily pump-action, Winchester, Ithaca, and Remington models. American use was more ad hoc and less doctrinally integrated than the British approach, but the effectiveness data matched. In dense vegetation at close range, the shotgun dominated. The Browning Auto 5's dominance in Malaya stands as one of military history's clearest demonstrations that tactical superiority comes from matching capabilities to conditions, not from deploying the most technologically advanced weapon. A semi-automatic shotgun designed in 1898 for hunting waterfowl proved more lethal in jungle combat than the precision rifles, submachine guns, and light machine guns that represented decades of military small arms development. The operational research was compelling. More shotguns meant more kills. 3 insights from this experience remain relevant. Engagement distance determines weapon effectiveness, not theoretical maximum range. The Lee-Enfield's 500-yard accuracy was meaningless at 20 feet. Hit probability matters more than single projectile lethality in close combat. 9 buckshot pellets at 20 yards will find a target that a single rifle bullet will miss, and institutional adaptability wins wars. The British Army's willingness to hand unconventional weapons to unconventional units, and then study the results with operational research rigor produced doctrine that shaped Special Forces operations for generations. The humpback Browning, sawn off and loaded with buckshot, remains the unglamorous symbol of that adaptability. British tactical excellence is not always about building the most sophisticated weapon. Sometimes it is about recognizing which weapon actually works.